How you guys doing tonight? You ready to be wowed, amazed, engaged, entertained? You've come to the right place, right? So as Kurt said, we started the Indigenous Coalition of Muscatine last year on the tail of the 4th of July parade. Our goal was to provide educational opportunities regarding Native American culture from Native Americans. Our goal is to create educational spaces and combat ignorance, right? We can't expect people to know things that they don't know. And the 4th of July parade was kind of one of those examples. So what we have been doing lately as part of the coalition is Justice and I have been going out and giving presentations. We have been going into schools and working with kindergarten students about Native American culture and allowing a safe space for them to ask questions. That's one thing that's very important as we go through this process. We're going to have a Q&A afterwards, and we want you to know that this is a safe space to ask those questions. We want your engagement. We want to know how you feel. You know, they came all the way down from Canada, you guys. Yeah. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to my sweet Auntie Joyce and my cousin Brenda.
Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me well? Yes? I'm a kindergarten teacher, so I can project. I like the thumbs up, thank you. So as Danny mentioned, we are her family from just above Maine. You know, on the map where you see nothing, that's where we're from. And originally, Danny asked us to come and speak with people. We were pretty excited. She almost convinced us to get on in your parade this year, but we decided that we'll come and speak now. Before we get started, we just wanted to show you a little bit about where we are from. We're from the, get over here. Okay. We're together.
Over there.
Yeah. So,
we're from there.
So we're from the Gaspé coast of Canada, which is just above Maine. And originally there were 7 districts of Mi'kmaq people. So unlike what we heard at the university yesterday in Iowa, there's many tribes. The Mi'kmaq people are mostly one nation over all of Eastern Canada. There are a few more, but we're here, so you can see right in the orange there. I'm pretty sure my slide just went dead.
I know. What happened?
Oh, no, we're back. Okay. So the Mi'kmaq people have been inhabiting that land since time immemorial, which means since as far back as archaeology dates, we've known to be there. So the most recent archaeology finds are about 12,000 years at least for the same language base, same groups of people. So we are also known as first contact people, which means when the Europeans came over, we were the first point of contact, and we were the first people that they encountered. And you can see here, these are some of the petroglyphs that are found at one of our national parks, and these date back at least 1,000 years, and the one of the ship is correlates with first contact history. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you through 12,000 years in about 4 slides. I'm not trying to graze over it, but we're just going to give you a little bit of information of how the Mi'kmaq people came to be, some of the struggles that we've had throughout history, and now what we are doing about it in our education system, trying to reclaim education for us. So it's going to be, you know, maybe a little tiny bit boring, but then we're gonna really sell this. So originally both French and English colonies came to Eastern Canada. And the funny thing is that the Mi'kmaq people actually were not engaged in any kind of wars or battles against the French and English. It was the French and English fighting each other over the Mi'kmaq territory. In the 1700s, there were treaties signed, and they're called the Peace and Friendship Treaties. So these treaties basically said, any settlers that come to Mi'kma'ki, we will share our bounty with you. You can fish, you can hunt, you can do all of these things in friendship. But what happened is, again, the French and the English were fighting a lot, and we kind of were on the side of the French because we had very good relations with them. What happened? The English eventually ended up winning, and our French colonies ended up fleeing south, which you guys know in Louisiana as Cajun.
Towards Maine.
Yeah, so the Cajun people of Louisiana actually were settlers, Acadian settlers in our territory. Thank you for the history lesson, right? So all of these treaties that we had in the 1700s really set the basis for a lot of our Supreme Court cases concerning wildlife, fisheries, land, things like that. So there are two very, very prominent things that happened to us in our community. One was, it was called the raids, the fishing raids of 1981, which basically was our fishermen were not allowed to set nets in the water. Where we are from, we have the world's best salmon, and it's one of the only rivers that flows through our community that still has a very lively salmon population. So in 1981, 500 provincial police came to Listuguj, our community, and using force, raided our whole community and took our fishing nets, arrested all of our fishermen, and it was, you know, it was very traumatizing and really,
brutal.
and brutal. And so this case was brought to the Supreme Court of Canada, and just based on the peace and friendship treaties 400 years previously, we actually ended up winning the case, saying that the First Nations people of our community can fish and for a moderate livelihood at any time. So that was a huge thing that we won, saying, you know, we are sharing our land, we're sharing all of these resources, and we shouldn't be arrested for putting our nets in the water at a specific time. Another thing that happened in 1999, and it's worth a Google search, it was the Donald Marshall case, which he was arrested and actually served a lot of time for putting his prison time for putting his nets in the water as well. And this case also went to the Supreme Court, and from this case now, all of Atlantic Canada is now a safe haven for Mi'kmaq fishermen to fish at any time we want. So we don't have to be regulated. However, within our own communities, we do realize that we have to conserve. So we ourselves are starting to control things like a fisherman can only have 2 nets in the water, but at least it's not the government of Canada, you know, making those choices for us. So that's basically, in terms of resources, a little bit of what we've been through. And it's gonna all be connected once you see how we run our classrooms. So I don't know if anybody is familiar with Indian Day School. I'm not sure if anyone knows what it was or you know, the effects of it, but I'll give you just a brief description. In Canada anyway, we had Catholic-run boarding schools that were sent to take children right out of the home. So from 0 to 18, parents had no choice at all. An Indian agent would come to the door and forcibly, if you didn't agree, if you were a parent that didn't sign off on it, would forcibly take these children and bring them to a boarding school where they would stay. And actually in Canada, there is many documents that state the reason for these schools is to take the Indian out of the child, right? It wasn't to help them read and write or help them all these, it was to take the Indian out. And recent history shows us a lot of atrocities that have happened at these schools. We're now, just today we went on social media and we found 50 more graves that they've uncovered on school sites. So right now the total-ish in Canada is upwards of 20,000 bodies that were uncovered on school grounds. So different schools all over Canada. And there was a lot of abuse as well, physical, emotional, sexual abuse, but it really was meant to have the child not know who they were. It was trying to, let's say, you know, whitewash and just take the Indian out of the child. And it separated families.
I personally myself experienced the residential and Indian Day School. And each time I talk about it, it's, you know, it breaks my heart, but I must say, Danny's family, which is Brenda's grandfather, he had to flee from his home, and he flee into the forest to live on his own in the forest.
At 10 years old.
At 10 years old. I myself, even with Brenda's father, being in the Indian Day School right in our community, he often got strapped if he spoke any of his language. We were not allowed to speak our language in the schools. So we went through a lot of trauma because of that, and it's still traumatizing for us, you know, to even talk about it.
So as you can see, this is not ancient history. It's a very real and very close history that we're speaking of. And every community in Canada had an Indian Day School, which was not an overnight school, but it was still a Catholic-run school within the community. And even now, if you speak to elders, some elders are still trying to process and still thinking, well, it wasn't that bad. Well, you know, maybe I learned to read and write without even really thinking about the effects that it's had for the generations to come. So what does that mean? Like, what happens to an entire population when they're taken from their home and they're just met with violence on a daily basis? Well, it completely breaks down your family and your home function. So once these students from 0 to 18 returned home,
If they returned.
if they did return home, they didn't know how to love or have any parenting styles. So a lot of times their pent-up anger just, you know, it continued a cycle of violence, of abuse, and they didn't know how to be parents, right? Or they didn't know how to go into their community and have any kind of self-worth. There was a huge, severe language loss. And when you speak of language, and especially nowadays when there's a lot of interracial children in our community, the one thing that can keep us together as a nation and identify us is our language. And even my father, he's a first language speaker, and he moved us away into the city to start a family because even though he's such a smart man, he was still convinced in the 80s that learning the language or learning different things wouldn't benefit us, right? So I only learned Mi'kmaq as an adult in my 30s, which, you know, it was hard to do. And then one of the important things, and what we're going to try to talk about today, is the loss of the connection to the land. Because if you hear any prayers, and this is pretty standard for all tribes, the connection to the land is sacred. And to us, the land is alive, and it is a being and an entity. So we have to create a relationship with the land. Just like having a relationship with your auntie or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, it's give and take, right? And to know how to navigate that really is a part of who we are as people. And so you can imagine that a lot of substance abuse and suicide rates within First Nations community is very high, because when they got out of residential schools, they could not function within their community. So
Yeah.
this is a good stuff. Sorry about that. But it really sets the tone for what we're trying to do within our education system today. And Joyce and I go all over the world, and we work with different school boards, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, to try to get children back to the land and have that relationship with the land, and create a learning environment that is very holistic for the child. Not like a day school or a residential school. So we figured that the traditional education system was not servicing our children. It was very standard, and the four walls of a classroom also didn't service our children. And there's a lot of articles that suggest that trauma, although it's not firsthand, is still transferred through your DNA. So although it was my parents and my grandparents that went through this, it's still transferred into children, right? Our whole community. So we would see a lot of behaviors within the schools, not wanting to pay attention, jumping off the walls. But I know that's not exclusive to Indigenous education. I think it's a lot of kindergarten classrooms you see that. And so as Mi'kmaq people, we don't invoke action for us right now in the moment. We try to make 7 generations behind us proud of us, and 7 generations in front of us, we try to make a good path. So all of these things that we're doing, although it seems minimal and we're trying, we really want to set our whole nation on a better path, right, from this point forward. So, you want to do land-based?
Yeah, okay, so Brenda and I decided to, out of the blue, I said, what can we do to help? I've been teaching Mi'kmaq immersion for about 20 years and been working about 25 as a teacher. I started off teaching in an English classroom. And then we noticed that there was a lot of language loss, and that students, the Mi'kmaq students, didn't have any self-identity. So Brenda was teaching the English, I was teaching the Mi'kmaq, and we were like both kindergarten, side by side, like the 2 rooms. And one child came up to Brenda, he said, what's Miss Joyce talking about? Like, is she speaking French? So the self-identity was not there. That child did not realize that he was a First Nations child. Like, so we said, my God, okay, we have to join together and let's see what we could do with this. So Brenda, with this, we decided, I said, why don't we take the kids outside, outdoors, and teach them from the land? So we made a proposal to the principal about this, and he agreed, but he said, no. He said, you guys can do it, but it's got to be separate. Brenda do the English, and I had to do my own Mi'kmaq separately. That was their belief. For whatever reason, they felt that my Mi'kmaq class might be affected by hearing English or whatever, because it's an immersion class. So what we did, we snuck around. So we ended up being together on a daily basis. In the afternoons, we'd go get on a bus and we would travel, go to different spots in our community, in the mountains, lakes, rivers. We'd go in the forest. And we noticed that there was a lot of language exchange happening. So her English students, which were Mi'kmaq, like First Nation students, they were starting to pick up the language by listening to their, my kids in my class, the Mi'kmaq language class. And they would start picking up the language. And then we noticed that the teachers that were working with us, which she had some EAs, they call them educational assistant teachers, and they were picking up the language. So there was like a teacher to teacher, there was student to student learning, you know, and a student to a teacher, so the exchange was happening. So we went back to our administrator and said, hey, you know, something's happening here. We need to, you know, like join together as one and create a beautiful outdoor program that we've been running for 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm always on this side of you. I have to be. So in 2014, like she said, we started a little pilot project, and it was working so well, not only just for the language, but because the students were no longer displaying behavioral issues within the class. And if you know any 5-year-olds, you know that they can turn it on and off, you know, whenever they want. So usually when a student isn't learning, it's because they're not developmentally ready or they're just not interested in what you have to say. So with about 5 years of running the program, we made another proposal, And this time we ended up getting our own facility that's actually in the forest. So our students don't go to a school, like the regular school. They have a bus. The bus drops them off in the forest at the beginning of the day. We do our thing and they go home. So this was just, this is our third year that we're actually immersed right in the forest. So our philosophy, we were thinking, how can we take care of children holistically? And how can we stop pushing these provincial or state standards on them, right? So our philosophy really is very, very simple. It's important to have knowledge of the heart. How do you get that? Well, you learn through the soles of your feet, the palm of your hand, and quite literally the seat of your pants. And all of that knowledge has to travel through the heart to get to your brain. So when you talk about outside and having a dynamic learning environment, our students, when you come to see them, they're calm, they're secure in who they are, they know who they are, they have the ability to express themselves. And if there's any second language learners in here, you know to learn the language, you have to speak the language, which means your classroom is going to get noisy, and your classroom is going to be, having full-on conversations. So trying to do that within the four walls of a classroom, it just seemed like we were always, stop, don't do that, don't touch this, sit down, right? So outside, it allows for more one-on-one time, and although we had at one point 25 students, it was easier for us to really get to know them and have little mini groups all over the place.
For mini lessons?
Yeah. And let's face it, children nowadays are, they have everything instantly because of screens and technology. And their patience are, they don't have patience. Those are things that you have to acquire and you have to learn, you have to try. You have to give space for that. So we really know that it's a really great learning environment and it's dynamic outdoors. Now these are videos, I'm not sure if they're gonna work, but I don't think so. So the videos didn't work, but they were just examples of, for instance, a child was climbing up the hill, right? You can just let them climb, or you can try to speak Mi'kmaq to them by saying, Dalugwen, what are you doing? Oh, I'm climbing up the hill.
So our program is really inquiry-based approach, like who, what, where, when, and why. So these are the questions that we have for the students often when we're outdoors. And our language is so verb-oriented. So a lot of things that the students do outdoors is all verbs, running, climbing, So this one of the slides here was that I was reinforcing the verb of climbing upwards. And then the students are so cooperative and they're so excited to learn or be doing something that they don't forget the word or the verb of what they're doing. And it comes back the next day, like in the classroom, we all reflect on what we did like the day before. And so even though I only had like those 5 kids climbing that hill, I would bring it back the next day in the classroom, and we would discuss it or show their pictures, because we do take pictures of them, and they feel so happy to see themselves doing something and speaking the language. So we get to be able to get a hold of all the students in learning the same thing at the same time, more or less, like climbing. And so anyway, we had 4 kids climbing where Brenda was somewhere else, but then I brought that back in the next morning, and we reflected on it. Yeah. So that's our approach.
And it's important to just really think about, in general, education for children is changing, because now children can learn ABCs 1, 2, 3 on a tablet. right? You don't have to go to school to learn those things anymore. So what is school for then? Well, for us, it's rebuilding our nation. So when Joyce is struggling to climb up the hill and we have 4 kids trying to pull her up, it's reinforcing community and taking care of your elders. I'm not an elder yet, so. So what we do is interest and discovery based. So our curriculum, we basically totally, completely just not tore it apart, but we dismantled it. And what we do is we run mini lessons. So when a child discovers something outside, Joyce and I kind of, look at each other and say it's a bug or it's a spider. We'll go and we'll go in with the language and we'll talk about numeracy. Oh, how many legs does that spider have? 4 on this side, 4 on this side. Oh, that's 8, right? But those are very surface questions. What we really want is to get them to start thinking about problem solving. As you saw in our history, those were things that were completely taken away and dismantled, right? And now we have to rebuild. And it's finally accepting, and I think this goes for education in general, is that it's unreasonable to expect students to learn the same thing at the same time from the same person, all the same. Everything's the same.
In the 4 walls.
In the 4 walls, right? We have to have students take ownership of their learning. So what we do is instead of a state or provincial curriculum, we go by seasons. So every season we can anticipate what's going to happen. We know that in the winter time, we take our children ice fishing because we know that the smelts run at a particular time. And if we know that and we transfer that to our students, then they're learning more about who they are and their relationship to the land, right? And, we know in the springtime, our fiddleheads come up. So we can go and pick fiddleheads and we can do lessons and, bring it back to our elders in the community. I don't think this video is going to work, but so we teach on the fly, which means we have to know our general curriculum well. And when a student is engaged or finds something outdoors, we go in right away and we try to teach a little tiny mini lesson. And then the next day we'll go back and re-explore it. Right. And I have to just say, we are not experts at all in anything outdoors. Like when we first started, do you remember okay, I'm going to tell you. When we first started, Joyce and I said, okay, you know what? We're going to find medicine today. Okay, we're going out. And there's a tree, it's a fir tree that have little sap bubbles on them, and you can pop them, and it has a medicine that comes out. And so I took out my Google, and I said, oh, geez, hey, Joyce, this medicine's good for skin irritation and chapped lips. So she's like, oh, yeah, and takes it and puts it on. And I don't think anything of it. And I turn around, and her lips are this big and red and stuck together. So then I started searching more. Oh, you have to boil it down first. And so, there's so many stories that we have that we didn't know, but we're learning alongside the children, right? So worrying about identifying outcomes or the curriculum always comes later. We make sure the children have an experience first, and then we go back and talk about it and identify all the curriculum outcomes.
So in this picture, that's me right there.
I wonder if it'll work.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm going to try. Maybe it'll go. No.
Anyway, so...
Is it all over the place?
It was to the right, so if you bring
Okay.
it back, you might be able to...
Oh, and trying to teach a teacher is the worst thing ever. I'm telling. Come on, girl.
Push it on your screen.
Hold on.
You're good.
Am I going? How come I can't do this? Oh, come on. I don't know.
Oh, I see it right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope this is not on the live stream. Somebody help. Anyway, what this is, I don't think I'm going to make it. What this is in our territory, one of our animals that we hold to a very high level, and what we hunt is moose. So we have huge 1,000 to 1,200 pound moose. Come on, baby. That was the most disappointing thing I could have done. So what we have is huge 12,000 pound moose that come right through our camp. I'm coming, guys. I'm doing it. that come right through our camp, and they make beds on the grass. So our children were walking around, and they noticed that all this grass was laying down. And they were asking, like, well, how come all that grass is standing up? And I think, somebody's coming. And why? It's not me. This thing is very stuck. I'm getting there, right? So they came and they said, Miss Joyce, like, why is this grass all laying down? So it was a moment, ha. And do I press the middle button now? Oh, you. What? You could have done that the whole time? What? Come on. Oh, here we go. Oh, and you can't hear it. That's okay. We don't. So, but what Joyce is saying is she's explaining to the children, this was a moose, and that's where they make their bed. And then Joyce's teacher brain said, how many children can we fit within the moose's body, right? So already you can see that we're talking about capacity, we're talking about measurement, we're talking about habitat. Right? And if you were to try to teach something like this within the classroom, you would maybe get one subject and maybe a couple outcomes. Whereas when you're experiencing it, you can get a million subjects all intertwined, have really rich lessons that the children will remember, right? So now they know that we fit 6 kids within a moose's body,
And
right?
that's how big the moose is, so that
Yeah.
so they can visualize. So.
Oh, come on. I got it. See, I work outside, not with technology, okay? Thank you. Next slide. Is it not? Well, this is the most exciting part of the presentation, I'll tell you that. The next slide, yep. Who's doing it? I see something. Okay, we're not going to do any more videos. How about that? Okay. So there's 2 types of approaches to learning that we do. One is called on-the-fly learning, which is my favorite. And it basically means that we just go out with the students and they discover something, and then our jobs as teachers are to go in and do really rich, healthy question and answer type things in the language. So mind you, this is all in the Mi'kmaq language. So not only are we teaching concepts, but we're also teaching the language at the same time. So it's very student-driven and it's customized. And it's so funny because quite often I'm in meetings about IEPs, like individual education plans, and the student is never there. It's always adults sitting at the table talking about the student, right? Whereas when we go out, these students are taking the education right into their own hands. They're what is interesting them, and they're very focused because they discovered it. So Joyce and I can go in and do any kind of numeracy, literacy, science, anything within what they found, and it's about 5 minutes and then we're out, right? So it's very rich, but we're not like Charlie Brown's teacher, like, and the kids looking around like, okay, lady, zip it. Another one is called purposeful learning, which means that we have a problem or a question and we go out to seek what's going on. So a lot of times if we have ice fishing, for example, or we go fishing with the kids, we know that we have to do some level of preparation before we go. So every morning we have what we call a circle time. So we meet inside. We have about less than an hour, I would say, of a circle time, which is literacy and numeracy and discussing what happened the day before. That's it. So we don't have to teach science, social studies, because it's already embedded in what we're doing in the afternoon. So these are just examples of on-the-fly learning. So we were walking around in the snow and we found some footprints. That's like a bobcat, right? So I had to mark that down. But right away, we said, okay, we can either walk by them and just say, oh yeah, bobcat, or we can create a story. Who's your characters? Oh, it's going to be a big cat. Oh, how do you know it's a big cat? Well, I'm looking at this. Okay, and what's the setting? Well, it's winter time. Where were they going? So our students, although on a provincial test, may not score high in literacy, our students can create an oral storytelling just based on footprints in the snow, which is hard for even an adult to do.
And then the second slide, the kids made their own fishing rods just by, going out in the forest and picking it out. But they were also interested in what kind of fish is in there. And, so Brenda and I, we would talk to them and said, maybe it's a trout. Do you think maybe it's a salmon? And one student said, no, salmons are kind of big. I think they're not in these waters. And then, so the next day we go back in the classroom and we tell them, okay, because we're salmon, like our community fishes salmon, but they realized that the salmon, you can only fish it like in the river, right? This is a lake, so of course it's trout. So they started learning the different species of fish and where they are in bodies of water. So they started to identify the fact what a river looks like and what a lake looks like, what a pond looks like. So a kindergartner learning this is very rich as compared to, like the traditional kindergarten class. So it's really...
And oftentimes when you try to test a student, it's circle what you think is right. And that's such a, I remember scoring excellent on a little test, the bubble test, remember when you're like A, B, C, right? And here you can actually see the students thinking and compartmentalizing and doing a lot of, a lot of learning, really. Okay, hold on. Come on, baby. Yes. So purposeful learning, so that was on the fly, like going out and just seeing what's what. Purposeful learning was going out with an intention. So here we saw some tracks, and we saw that something was getting into like a lot of the food scraps and things, so the kids were like, whoa, what is it? So we put a trail cam, and we ended up finding out that it was a raccoon. Yeah. So, and this is all student-led. So the kids figured out, all in a matter of 20 minutes, they figured out, the habitat of the raccoon, what the raccoon preferred to eat, where it lived, different things like that, and they remember it. So what we're trying to do is trying to bring back a love for our community and for each other. Because traditionally, Indigenous communities, like we're strong with like the aunties, right? Like if you have an auntie, they're raising you. Yeah, see, I can't shake her. But they're raising you alongside your parents, and so are your uncles and your grandparents. It's very, very rich community. And when the residential schools happened, that was completely lost and dismantled. So here we're trying to teach the children. So, for example, every spring we have something called fiddleheads. I don't know if you know, but it's like a delicacy. And they grow in our, just as the snow melts and the ground is still wet, these fiddleheads pop up. And what we did is we went out, we picked them, so we cleaned them, and then we were able to go out in our community and share. Right? So all the elders that love this food are like, yes, oh, that's so cute, and bringing the elders with the children. For some reason, I find in mainstream school systems, they're like, don't let the elders buy the children, they'll get sick, right? Like how many times do you hear that kids get elders sick? But with us, we found that the mental health of our elders was just increased, and the happiness and their will to, not that their will to live, but they had a reason for living. Yeah, and then they would be comfortable to share. So really teaching in our culture, the little ones take care of the elders, as opposed to elders taking care of the little ones. So we're really trying to bring that back with sharing with them on a daily basis. And Also with this is we had to go out 2 or 3 times and canvass the area, right? So you're talking about them surveying the area. Oh, they're not ready yet. Why? Well, did we have a late winter? Oh, yes. Is the ground thawed yet? So all of these little intricacies that
Or
they're thinking about,
overgrown,
right?
yeah.
So, all these little intricacies that you could easily just, write off are actually things and examples of any curriculum in the state or province, and you can tie in all of these things, especially like data management or. So one of the things, and I don't think this is exclusive to Indigenous children, is our children these days, it used to be, we used to have helicopter parents, which kind of, floated around their children and protected them.
Don't climb that tree.
Yeah, now there's something called a snowplow parent that's like, get out of my baby's way. There's no discomfort here, and, sit down and don't do that. And, where we are, if you feel safe enough, by all means, go ahead. So our children build things. We don't have a playground where we are, so they have to build their own playground. If a tree had fell, then they make out a balance beam, or they make their own stools, structures, things like that, which seems, by the untrained eye, seems like play, they're just playing. But really, we can see all of the things that go into. And just a side note, our nation is world-renowned for being iron workers. So it's technically in their blood to build and to create and to put together structures. So it provides a perfect setting for every type of student. We have students that have exceptionalities, whether it's autism, ADHD, behavioral issues, and at first, our administrators told us, no, they can't go to you because they cannot learn the language, that's too much. I mean, they already have ADHD, or they already have autism. And so for a long time, they were not allowed to come to our class. They would be strictly to the English side until last year when they needed us.
So we did some research and we said, okay, this is enough. We're going to start welcoming these students in our classroom. And we had a student last year, apparently the year before that student only went to school 1 hour a day and only went to school for 3 months because they couldn't handle him. So the year later, which was this past September, we took him in. Never missed one day of school.
Yeah.
And he was there every day. He was never sent home. And he did exceptionally well and progressed really well just being in our program.
Yeah. And one of the main things that I think non-Indigenous populations are really coming to us for is we don't have a principal's office. So a lot of times when you deal with children's behavior issues, it's get to that principal's office, and then the child sits there, and here's the principal, and here's their parents coming in. Whereas when we see a student frustrated or they're in anger mode, we have a front porch and we have extreme cold. So we say, okay, front porch. And as soon as they hit the cold, you can see, you can see, and there's a lot of research behind cold weather and breathing techniques.
Yeah.
And immediately you can see these students get outside and they're mad. And then whew, and we don't have to, we help them through it, but we don't have to call the principal. We don't have to call their parents. They are self-regulating.
Yeah.
They're helping themselves self-regulate. And I don't know if you've seen, adults, but there are a lot of adults that never learned how to self-regulate when they were children, and they're menace to societies now because they don't have that self-regulation, right? Mm-hmm. So that was a real turning point for us in helping students with exceptionality. So now you should see our classroom. It's wild. They're like, can you take little Johnny? I'm like, yes, sure, no problem. So children with ADHD, we had a psychologist come and visit us.
Oh, yeah.
And she could identify, when we were inside of the camp, she could identify every single student that had an exceptionality, whether it was autism, ADHD, any kind of behavioral issues. She could not identify them at all outside, not one. She had no idea the exceptionalities at all. It just, people were happy doing their own things, these students. So that's really where non-Indigenous communities are coming to us saying, hey, we have that same problem with behaviors in the classroom. Like, what are you guys doing? We're putting them on the porch.
Yeah, we helped a lot of non-Indigenous communities to help set up this, the same type of program as we have.
Yeah.
So we've been invited all over the world. We've been everywhere, just trying to help other people in other communities that this can work.
And it's not about controlling the student, right? It's about helping them help themselves. So for a First Nations perspective, for us, one of the main things was to try to get our students to know who they are, because a lot of their parents, the culture has not been passed down. We know why now. So we do things like hunting, fishing. That's my little niece there. And that's my daughter up there. I have permission to use their photos. So actually that's the tree that attacked Joyce.
Oh, yeah.
And then it got me thinking, maybe I could do like a little Botox in a bottle. Maybe we could get some money here. But anyway, what we do is a lot of hunting, a lot of fishing, picking, harvesting medicines. We make tea for elders. Just this year, I don't know if you know the beauty of birch water, but we tapped 6 birch trees this year just out of an experiment, and we collected just an insane amount of gallons. Do you use gallons here? Okay, gallons. I was going to say liters, and then I think we did like almost 100 gallons of just in a short 2-week span. So then we were like, what are we going to do with this water? Birch water has enough magnesium in a little cup for your entire daily allowance. So when the elders found out that we were tapping birch, they were lining up saying, my bones are hurt. I have cramps in my legs. Can you get us some more? And
they were able to know, like they remembered from the past that their parents used to harvest birch water also. So it was like a reminder to them, and they were very excited. Oh my God, you guys are doing that? I haven't heard about this in a long time, and it feels good to hear it again. And they really embraced it. Yeah.
And it's good for your skin and hair too, just a side note. And so we do a lot of these things with these students, and right away when we do presentations, they're like, what? Do you let students use knives? They're 5 years old. And I said, well, I don't just give them a knife and tell them to go, go to town. But what we found is the troublemaker in your class, if you give them a high responsibility of something like using a knife or a fishing rod, they become the leader. And they become the most well-behaved, focused student because they have that responsibility. And meanwhile, little Susie, who's, I wouldn't give her a knife because, woo! But it seems to be the ones that are the behavior issues within the class enjoy using it. And we've never had, stabbings or anything like that. They really take the responsibility really well. So we do teach them how to use it and things like that, but we let them use drills, knives, they whittle different things, so. So you remember at the beginning we talked about the disconnection with Mother Earth. Really disconnecting. It happened, and you see it almost on a daily that some of our community members have lost that, that connection, and there's things going on that, you have to question. So when we talk about a relationship with Mother Earth, we have our students speak to Mother Earth, anything, a tree. So before they pick a flower, it's not that we say, don't ever pick that flower, but our students will go and say, okay, can I pick you and give you to my mom, and here's some tobacco, and it's always an exchange. So it's never us taking, it's always an exchange, and that's important.
And it usually in the beginning of the year, like in September when the students come in, we often, like when they're getting ready to get on the bus, we have to check their pockets. Worms and, oh my God, spiders and all kinds of stuff. But then we knew that they're going to get over that and they'll stop because we taught them how to respect and give thanks. And often what they would do when we're in the forest, when they do take something, they will offer tobacco because that's part of our tradition. And tobacco is medicinally known for our nation, our First Nations people.
And just a side note, if you don't have tobacco to offer as the exchange, there is something that you can just take like a little piece of hair and, you know, exchange. And I remember I told a student one time and I turned around and she had like a whole piece. I'm like, no, just a little one. That's okay. And I know it may sound silly to some people, but really having an exchange or like a treaty, remember at the beginning saying with the earth is really important for that connection because we realize that there's going to be more Supreme Court cases and these children are going to have to protect our land and they're going to have to be advocates for having healthy relationships with the land. So these early experiences really matter. And one of the ways that we stop them from bringing little creatures home is talking to them about residential school, saying, you know, would you like, you know, you could be displaced from your home or that has happened. How would you feel? Oh, no, that wouldn't.
Back to the mommy and daddy.
Yeah. So, you know, that wouldn't feel nice. So they really can understand very, very complex situations in a very basic way. We're almost done here. Woohoo. Oh, come on, Brenda. Yes. So tracking, fishing, harvesting, and gathering, as you can see in these pictures, these are just some of the things we do. We have nice smelts up there. Every year we go out, we can cut our own Christmas tree if we like. We have tracking where we follow rabbit tracks. And if you ever get a student that's really high energy, you just have them follow a squirrel track.
Oh, yeah.
Woo-hoo! I'm like, go ahead, follow that. And so these are just pictures of every year we go, and of course I have to drill the holes. That's not fun, and we actually take them on our river and we do smelts. An elder comes in, and they learn how to clean the smelts.
The tides, they learn.
And they learn about tides. Like, what kindergarten kid do you know that can go outside and look and say, no, tides are not right. Smelts aren't running.
Oh, the water's moving, they would say.
Yeah.
It's coming up.
And a really important thing is that our elders are very hesitant to come to a school, right? Because of all of
residential schools.
all of the things that have happened to them. And a lot of people in our community that are traditional knowledge holders, our hunters, have criminal records just because they drop their nets out of season, right? So there's always something. But if you ask them to meet on the land, they'll come.
They're there.
They're hesitant to go to school, but they will come on the land and share. Let's see here. Oh, look at this. This is us preparing the smells. Look at the little girl. She's like, I don't think I like this.
Yeah, being grown
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. She's like, And this is our moose. You can see how big they are. So we have a hunter. We have about 5 hunters on call during the September, October. And they'll hunt a moose in the morning and call us, and we're there within, a couple hours. And our children actually can skin the moose. They can make tools with the antlers, different things, yeah.
Oh, this is cute.
No, we're not going to try it. This is another video. I'm not doing it. But basically, this is just a video of this little girl.
Telling us what she discovered.
Yeah, telling us what she discovered and telling us in Mi'kmaq language, telling us about the numeracy. So we have numeracy, language, the color, and giving thanks, all in this. And she discovered like spiders, I think it was. But I can send you that. Okay, so we know that earth and our heart is our first teacher. So what does this mean for us, right? We're all coming from different backgrounds. We're different races, nations. So, but we all have a common goal of healthy children, right? Creating healthy children to create healthy adults. So I know that one of the things where we can meet on a middle ground is having empathy for living things. and having a relationship with the land and respect. And I know that Indigenous practices may seem primitive or they may seem silly when you see a kid like kissing a tree or hugging a tree, but I think that we can come and find a middle ground. And First Nations education in Canada is now on the forefront of education because education's changing. We no longer need a system that was designed for military. Canadian education curriculum system was originally designed to create a good military and have students grow up to be very compliant in the military. So that's not serving us anymore. So now we're moving to creating a holistic child. And I always talk about strength-based. So I used this example yesterday. If you have a student or you have a child that is excellent at soccer, like so good at soccer but not so good in math, do you get a math tutor or a soccer coach? Are you focusing on their deficits or their strengths? Where we are really trying to do is focus on their strengths and having them really go far with something they enjoy and the strengths. And you cannot find a student's strength by keeping them in four walls and telling them what to do. You can only do that when they experience. All right, that's it. Thank you. My first clap of the evening. So that's it. If we have any questions or anything, just let us know. We'll be hanging around, but I hope you enjoyed and we weren't too boring.
My question is, does your community either expect or require you to make like assessments of students? And if so, what's your approach to that?
Okay. So we actually, we can send Danny the link because we also had that question about ourselves, right? Like, how are we assessing these students? So a wonderful woman named Beverly Baker from the University of Ottawa came to visit our classroom, and she was able to identify different assessment methods that we didn't even know we were doing. And she wrote an article supporting what we were doing, which basically, when we do assessments, it is mostly verbal, because I had an issue where we would teach outside, but then we would try to assess them on paper. And it's like trying to assess an elephant on his ability to fly, right? So what we do is verbal, and mostly when we do assessment, it's Joyce and I sitting down at the end of the day. What did you see? It's all observation. And actually, when we do assess, we have a very broad idea of what we expect from the students. We do follow a provincial curriculum, but only for language and math. Everything else is a bonus. So on the land, for instance, Joyce and I say, okay, little Jimmy, I think he's a little weak in his numeracy. So we'll go on a hike and we'll find, let's say, trail markers. Oh, we're lost. We need to find, what trail we're on. And Jim will go, oh, that's number Ogamokshit 8, right? So Joyce and I will look at each other, ding, ding, right? And we do very formal assessments, but it's all in game form. So it's never sitting down, having a test. It's never, repeat after me, flashcards, flashcards, flashcards. It's very on the fly, and it's between Joyce and I noticing those times.
The research is there regarding informal assessment versus formal. And now, today, people and scholars are now really looking into informal assessment. And there's a lot of research behind there. There was a paper that was published, or a book with our findings of formal versus informal. And so there is research behind there if you want to.
And formal assessment, sometimes you miss the mark. For instance, we had a little girl, and it was easy, like, okay, let's write your numbers 1 to 5. Nope, didn't do it, so didn't do it inside, right? And we're like, what is going on? She doesn't know them, she doesn't know, but outside,
we did little things and she knew them. We're like, so what is going on here? Turns out she didn't like the color of her pencil, right? So we're assessing students based on something that's right there in front of them, but there could be a million things going on of why they don't produce it. So to catch it in real time is the perfect assessment, right? So we are always looking to catch things actually in real time because we don't know what's going on with the student when they sit down to produce work. It could be the color of their pencil, it could be they need to use the washroom. You know, we don't know why they're not, but if you catch them in real time, that's the goal.
Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Yes.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your story, and I'm wondering if you've been able to take your pedagogy and transfer it into the next grades, right? And where is that going?
Yes.
Okay.
We're in the process. Okay. So at our current school, we have a Mi'kmaq immersion from nursery, so that's 4-year-olds, up until 10-year-old. So the past 4 years, Joyce and I have worked very, very hard to implement this pedagogy within that sector. So now all of our students that are in our immersion go out at least 3 times a week in the afternoon, mandatory. They go out on the land as well. And for our school, they have an outdoor education class, like a gym class. So they, stop, Brenda. So they do. And we're working more and more within our little sector to, you know, it's like a pilot project right now to advance it. But when we talk to like the grade 1 teacher, grade 2, grade 3, all of the statistics were the same, that we are producing students that are academically at par or above, even a student that would work from 9 a.m. till 3:30. Work. So our students are not academically weaker at all, but they did notice that they have better problem-solving skills, right? So yeah, we're working on it and we're trying to get more and more teachers involved for sure.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. What about your relationship with the parents, right, and how they're handling things then at home?
Sure.
The question was, what about the relationship with the parents and how they handle the transition from school to home?
So thank you for that question because it's important. At first, the parents were like, I don't want my children to fall behind. I want them to have education. Very much like, like the residential school. Like, I don't want my child to be behind. So it did take us a little while to prove that this was still viable. Now in our community, we have parents sending them to us because they sleep so well at night. They sleep so well being outside for 5-6 hours a day. So we really had to gain the support of our community, but at this point, the parents realize how beneficial it is, and nobody has seen any adverse effects. So at the beginning, they were really cautious, like, I don't know if I should trust you, but as soon as their children were sleeping better, coming home, speaking the language.
Their academics were just as good, so they didn't lose.
They didn't lose anything, and then when you have the elders and our students have more in common with the elders of our community than they do their own parents in terms of what they talk about, the medicines that they use, what they see in a day. So it's really good and healthy. But at first, yeah, we had some that were questioning.
Great questions. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
How many other schools, how is this spreading, yeah.
How many other similar likely schools are there around, and what's the spread rate? Not COVID.
Well, when Brendan and I started this outdoor program, other communities noticed that we were doing it and they were interested to come and visit us and know more about it. So we found ourselves visiting different communities outside of our community and helping them develop their own program in their communities. And there is several coming up everywhere, all over the place.
One interesting fact is in Mi'kma'ki on Atlantic Canada, on every reserve or community, there is at least one initiative now that is starting an outdoor program, especially for the early years. Like Joyce and I even want to start like a 0 to 3. Which it might be coming. We might be back talking about that. But it is spreading. The one thing that's unique about our program is it is fully language based. But, you know, we have to start somewhere. If you don't know the language, that's okay. Go out anyway, because that will service your students for sure. So it is spreading, yep.
Yes.
Is it just an oral language or is it also written?
Is it oral or written? So our students do learn how to read and write it as well. So it's all phonetic. We still teach phonetic rules. We teach printing. We teach oral language. Of course, the best component is our oral language skills. But by the time our students are 10, they can read, write, and speak. So it's all encompassing. And actually, interesting enough, when our students leave the Mi'kmaq sector, so they would be 11 years old, it takes them about a month or two, and then they're on the exact same curriculum as their English counterparts. So they can learn English reading and writing either at home, at leisure, on the iPad, and when they go and join children that have learned reading and writing in English for 6 years, it takes them maybe 2 months to catch up, and then you don't notice the difference.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your long journey down here to help us on our journeys. My question for you tonight is, are the kids of different ages all together? And if so, how do you encourage them to look out for each other and assist each other?
Me or you? All right. So usually we have just our class, but on occasion we do bring our past graduates from in the immersion, and that is the best thing ever, because the teachers can kind of sit back and watch the magic happens. What usually happens is the older students turn into caretakers. Or teachers. So they'll go out and play with the younger ones and have that language interaction, and they'll start teaching them like, oh, okay, I'll help you with this. So our students really do turn into teachers, and our little ones just love it, because the older ones will get the little ones to do all the gross stuff. Like, oh, you take those guts out of the fish and dig for something, and we'll just do the fishing. But it's cute because they have such a natural relationship and a caretaking relationship that you can see the exchange happening, and especially in the language. Yeah.
Yes.
You say that you're only required to teach the math and the language, but it's obvious that there's science going on. Is there an opportunity for history and other courses as well?
For other courses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So because of the nature of our program, all history, social studies, science, all takes care of itself when we do our mini lessons. So for instance, history, when we were talking about treaties, we would catch children in an argument and, try to resolve it. And we would go by the treaties and the history. So it's not formal, but when Joyce and I sit down at the end of the day and we talk about what we've seen, we have like a big map of our curriculum, say, oh, that was language. Okay, that goes into social studies, that goes into history. And by the end of the year, it's all cross-curricular. You would be amazed. We cover more curriculum doing it this way than I would trying to keep the kids in all day long. So we are still able to show our administrators different things that we've talked about. But mind you, it might not be the same each year. But not one administrator has ever come up to me and said, oh, you're teaching your children about treaties instead of something else. You know what I mean? So at that age. As they get older, it becomes more purposeful, but as they, like say a child that's 10 years old, you would go from, you would move away from on the fly, because you know when you're 10 they have that angst and they're kind of, oh, this is boring, and you would go to more purposeful learning anyway. So the teacher would prepare these lessons and then you can experience it outside. So we do a lot of curriculum mapping, and it's different every year, aside mostly from our language and math is consistent. Everything else just is varying.
Yes.
Once students have left, like the immersion program, like 11 and up, are there still opportunities for them to further their language use within either the school system or the community?
The question was, once the students leave the program, is there still an opportunity for them to use and apply the language in schools or other trying activities?
Oh, you struck a chord with Miss Joyce here. So it is something that we're working on. For instance, my son went through the entire immersion program, and from grade 6 to 8, he had a core language. So a language speaker would go into their classroom and teach them for a half hour. But what was happening is the students from immersion were way too advanced for the core. So this year, Joyce and I want to implement an enrichment where students in grade 5, 6, 7, and 8 can come to the camp and be our aides and practice the language engagement with the younger students and with us in a very informal way, like helping us serve them lunch or helping, you know, anything in the language. So yeah, and when they get to high school, they also have classes. And then out of high school, we have adult immersion classes within our community. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to ask the question for faculty that might be in here. How much does it feel that it's easier to teach this way than it is to teach traditional?
The question was, the question was, how much easier is it to teach kids outside of the classroom versus the more traditionalism since? And I think we know the answer.
You want to go? Yeah.
Well, I went to a formal classroom, and I remember when I was a child how it was like to be sitting behind a desk and not being able to get up unless you're asked to get up. And then just the fact that having the four walls around you, not being able to express when you want to express. You didn't have the freedom to express. And I feel that now the education system and how we all see it now, we need a shift. We need a good shift where students should be learning in a more comfortable, expressive, I don't know what else, yeah.
But for teachers, I am so calm all day long. Like, if I feel frustrated as a teacher, we go out. And usually the first 20 minutes of being outside, you still hear fighting and you still hear this and that. But after 20 minutes, everybody settles, myself included. And then the magic happens. I remember having a lot of pressure from like the teacher next door, right? And they would be like, oh, those kids are so noisy. And then it would just become a poor work environment, because it always seemed when I was indoors, I had somebody judging me, like another teacher, right? All the time saying, you know, well, that's not how you do things, or, you know, and I don't know if you've ever been in a class with 25 5-year-olds, but that's a high pressure. It's like dismantling a bomb or something. It's a high pressure environment, and you only have so much patience. And naturally, when we go outside as teachers, every single person that has ever worked with us was like, oh, man, this is so much better. You can connect with the children better. We are probably blood pressure levels come down. We feel at peace. We go sit by the water. We have engaging conversations. And then we can go back in and be extra great language teachers or math teachers for a short amount of time. And then we can get out. So it's helped us, and it's helped my auntie stay in the career that she's been in for so long and not retire. And if she was in a regular classroom all day, I'm telling you, she would be gone by now. So it does help us.
Yes.
One more question to kind of like segue from what you were talking about would be,
collaborative mindset. Oh, we share a brain. You didn't pick that up? Yeah.
It takes personality, I guess. I don't know. Working with somebody, you need to be able to communicate really well. I can't say we should be almost like have the same interests or anything like that, but actually really being able to communicate and be open. And yes, we do sometimes see a few things, some differences, but then we work them out. And I feel a lot of people should be able to work together. If you don't have a good working relationship with a person, you will not succeed. And it's very, very, very important that you have a good working relationship with your coworker.
And also another thing, I don't know if you picked up on, but we always talk about student strengths and trying to, notice their strengths and lift them up. Well, I have my own strengths and she has her own strengths. And because we structured our classroom in such a way that I don't have to be an expert in all subject areas, in everything. I have my strengths and I know my strengths. So one of my strengths is being able to supervise a lot of kids around water or anything, and Joyce's strength is like the grandmother loving thing. And I'm a little bit more like, hey, what are you doing over there? So I don't have to worry about being somebody that I'm not because we can identify strengths. So anybody in our class, we have a man who works with us that has COPD. I think he's working on like 12% of his lungs. But his doctor, so he's been with us 2 years outside, and his doctor told him that this class is keeping him alive. Whether it's the love from the students, the cold air, the outdoors, the exercise. But we know that his strength is like the father bear. So sometimes in extreme cold, he's not outside, but he's inside if the kids need to go in and blow their nose or... Yeah, no, so you'd be the father bear. So if the kids need to run in and get a snack or blow their nose or warm up or put their socks on the heater and switch and change, that's his strength. So we dig hard into that. So he's not expected to be us and we're not expected to be him. But at the beginning of the year, we sit down and say, what are our strengths? And once you work towards your strength and not your weakness, you're much happier.
Developing positive relationships with our co-workers. I mean, we're learning a lot of new things here today, guys, so. Questions? I saw your hand go up first.
I'm curious, is it just mainly people from your tribe that are in this class, or do you have non-Indigenous kids too?
The question was, is the immersion class mostly made up of your tribe or other outside individuals that want to participate in the class as well?
Well, we have both, but currently it's mainly our nation, our tribe. But there are non-Indigenous students that go to our school because their parents work in our community or anything like that, and that would never inhibit us. Like we would be welcome, open arms. And we even have a little girl that's non-Indigenous that went through the immersion program, and she can speak Mi'kmaq, so it's welcoming. But because we're in control of our education, our school, our community is right in our community. And then we have in the town next over, there's another public school. So mostly it is just our community.
Alrighty, guys, it is 6:30, so I'm going to take 2 more questions. We've had so much fun in the last hour and a half, and then I will break us up. Feel free to enjoy your hors d'oeuvres behind us here. We'll be in touch for a meet and greet. We'll hang around. But yeah, 2 more questions, and I saw your hand, and then I'll take you after that, sir.
Easy question. What hours of the day does your school operate, and is it how many days of the week?
The hours of operation for the immersion program was the question, and the number of days per week.
Okay. So we're still 5 days a week, but I'm pushing for 4. Because I have a lot to say about that too. So we're 5 days a week. The 3 to 8 go from 8:30 to 3:30. So the grade 3s to the grade 8s, and the pre-K to grade 2 are from 8:30 till 2:30. And our students are outside probably 5 hours a day, rain or shine, cold, windy. The only thing we don't do is lightning or thunder, but Joyce can't hear the lightning or thunder anyway, so sometimes she's out there. I'm like, Joyce, bring them in. So yeah, we have and we serve our students at our camp, so we have lunch with the students, so we don't get breaks, but we're outside, so we don't need them.
I think it was only twice this year that we didn't take our kids out of the whole year and all the seasons and the weather and the cold. We take them out in all weather, yeah.
So yes, we're very cold, but right now where we're from is hotter than here. I think we're at 100 plus. You guys use 100. I was going to say 30 and you've been like, what? No, but so it does get very, very hot for about 3 months and the rest is 6 feet of snow.
We have good communication with the parents, so we do prepare the parents what to expect. So the children like dress in layers, they have extra clothes, so we're pretty prepared for any weather.
And sir?
So within our community, we have knowledge holders that hold sweats. And a sweat is basically you go into like a dome, and there's 7 grandfather rocks. And these are like granite rocks that you can heat up so hot. And you sit around and you close the door, and the whole idea of when you're in a sweat, it's completely black. So there's not one little ounce of light that comes in. So when that happens, instead of looking outward, it forces you to look withinward, right? And in a sweat, you stay there for 4 rounds. So it could last a couple hours, but basically it's like a big sauna. And the leader of the sweat would do prayers, songs, and burn medicine. So it's like a complete steam. So what they noticed is that when they were treating, let's say, soldiers that have come back, doing a series of sweats helped them look within themselves to help themselves instead of something external to try to help them. So even if you did a quick Google, right now, more and more people are being recommended to do that kind of treatment just because it allows you to sit with yourself, right? And not relying on anybody else to quote unquote help or fix. It's going to be all internal. So, and even in terms of like medicines now, where a lot of people are coming to our community and asking for different teas and chaga. Do you guys know chaga? So it's a fungus that grows on usually birch trees way up high. They ground it up and they'd use it as treatment for cancers and things like that. But really reaching during a sweat is like really super going into a deep meditation. And people come out of the sweats and they have dreams after, visions or dreams that it helps them sort through their trauma. Yeah.
It's me. I've been sitting here quietly the whole time, all proper. So I think one thing that comes up quite often when I speak to people about being Native American, because I try to explain that to them before coming down, I said, there's not very many of us. You know, I jokingly called myself the token native of Muscatine for the longest time, because when anything came up, I'd be getting phone calls, Danny, what do you think about this? And I'm like, I can't make those decisions for you. But when I speak about the language immersion program, people are always like, can you say, hey, can you say this? Can you say that? Because people are interested. They want to know what it sounds like. So if you guys are interested, as we end this, I really appreciate the time and space that you shared with us today. I hope that you feel really great and that you've learned something from us. And I would like to ask my sweet auntie to end us in a prayer.
Before she prays, I just want to tell you that our immersion program has been going on for about 12 years, from 4-year-olds to 10-year-olds, and every single student that has completed the immersion has gone on to high school, and we have not one high school dropout. And this is not, yes, yes. And this is not due to academics. I strongly believe that this is due to learning the language and being confident and learning who they are as people. So, thank you.
You don't have to stand up for some of you, that's okay. The four of us. Well, ali ek kisok, okshit desi punkek. Well, ali ek kisok, okshit dan deligen wiek na kweko. Dan deligen wiek na go set. Ach dan deligen wiek mahamigeo sigu ach wisisk. Well, ali ek dan deliang kwe wiek. Ach wel ali ek okshit dan deli aim kisku okshit abon wano ula mimachwi nuk okshit degmo matno dagwe edelginamuek. Wel ali ek okshit nkich ach nuch ach dibich kamich ach no hama. Wel ali ek kiso okshit imsit kohe dan deli nuek desi kunkek nadliech.
Alrighty, guys, let's give them another round of applause. Thank you for taking the time to be here today.